Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is going to be the first in a pretty long series. I'm going to basically be reviewing one major free agency signing or move per day, and I'm going to be basically reviewing it from a few different perspectives, from the player's perspective, from the team's perspective, and then I'm sort of going to give like a best case scenario for how this turns out, worst case scenario for how this turns out. And after that, I think that we'll have a pretty good handle on where I stand on the move and really what the move means for the team and for the player going forward overall. So, if you've been under a rock for the past 24 hours, you might not know, but Jimmy Butler has signed a contract with the Miami Heat. This is one of the oddest, most surprising moves of all of this free agency. I'd say there's no move that has surprised me more than Jimmy Butler to the Miami Heat for a lot of different reasons that I'm going to get into. I am passionate about this one. I have very strong feelings, and it's going to become pretty clear pretty quick how I feel about this. But first of all, I'm going to go through this from the Heat's perspective before I go through it through Jimmy's perspective. So, why this makes sense for the Miami Heat. This team is kind of aimless right now. This last season, they won, I think, around like 40 games. They didn't really have much of direction. They had Dwayne Wade on the roster, and basically they just devoted the season to giving Dwayne Wade a farewell tour, which that's fine. That's well and good. But basically, they put the team's success on hold for a year to give Dwayne Wade a farewell tour, it felt like. Um, they originally tried to trade for Jimmy Butler in the early part of the season. They were offering Josh Richardson for him, along with maybe like Bam Adebayo or with Dion Waiters maybe, but that didn't come to fruition. But you could tell early at that point that they really wanted Jimmy Butler, and he was actually, or they were one of the four teams on Jimmy Butler's list to be traded to. So that was maybe a sign that they were going to link up in the offseason. Either way, the Heat basically are a meddling team. They needed some help, they needed a boost. And I really thought that they were going to trend more towards the blow it up and let's just try and do a rebuild thing based around like Josh Richardson and Justice Winslow and Bam Adebayo. But it seems like no, they're definitely trending towards the we want to win now thing. So the Heat basically for this trade, or it's honestly, it's more like a trade rather than a signing because they did give up two key rotational players in exchange for Jimmy Butler. So they sent Josh Richardson to Philadelphia, and then to clear up cap space, they sent Hassan Whiteside to Portland. So um, that tabulates to the 35 million that Jimmy Butler's going to be making per season. And I don't know about this. Josh Richardson was a good player last year. Last year for the Heat, he averaged 17 points per game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He shot 36% from 3, 41% from the field. He wasn't a great player, but he was a really good, solid team player. Probably their best player after Dragic last year. And then as for Whiteside, a guy who, he's 30 now. He's not great. Last year he averaged 12 points and 11 rebounds, but he is still a blocks machine. Um, so if you adjust for his per 36 minutes last year, Whiteside averaged 19 and 18 with 3 blocks per game, so 19 points and 18 rebounds per 36 minutes. So he's still a valuable player, and I think still a decent player. The reason that people don't value him as much anymore is because next year he'll be making $27 million per year, so that's really the deterrent. Either way, back to the Heat. They gave up two rotational good rotational players for Jimmy Butler. Pretty even trade as far as what they gave up for what they got. And so in my saying of that, I don't really think they improved that much, so to speak, in that they traded two starter level players for Jimmy Butler. And while Jimmy Butler is good, he is already 30. He's going to be 34 when this deal ends. And I think, this year and next year he'll be a good player. Um, but after that, I don't know. They're going to be paying him well, excuse me, the deal ends when he's 33, because this next season he'll be 30, then 31, 32, 33. I don't know when he's 33 if he's really going to be worth the $35 million per year, but that's sort of a concept in the NBA called the poison pill, or actually in any major sport, wherein you basically overpay a player to get them for their first couple years, and then you basically take it on the chin for the last two because they're not really worth what you're paying them, but you were basically paying him all that money just for the first 2 years. So that's what's going to happen with Jimmy Butler. They're really giving him this contract for his first 2 to 3 years of play, and then they're just going to take the lumps of the last year when he's likely declined quite a bit and isn't really worth the money he's making. But okay, so for the Heat, why they did this basically to get a star that they can build around because they're trying to win now because Dragic is still a good player but aging. James Johnson's still a good rotational player but aging. Kelly Olynyk is actually getting closer to 30 than we realize for a guy that seems relatively to have entered the league relatively recently. Same with Dion Waiters, who's going to be 28 next year. Bam Adebayo, they're looking to leverage his good play from this season to contribute to a playoff contender. He can finally start without competition. And then Justice Winslow, they're looking to build on his good season and take advantage of what was a promising start, like basically a promising season last year. So the starting lineup after this trade is probably going to look like Kelly Olynyk at center, power forward James Johnson, small forward Justice Winslow, shooting guard Jimmy, and then Goran Dragic at the starting point guard spot with probably like Dion Waiters or actually Bam will probably start at center over Kelly Olynyk. So scratching that starting lineup of Dragic, Butler, um, Winslow, Johnson, and Adebayo with a bench mainly of Dion Waiters and Kelly Olynyk. So those are going to be like their 7 main rotational guys. Probably Derrick Jones will find his way in there too because he had some flashes of being a good player last year. When I look at that core, basically a core of Dragic, Butler, um, Bam, those are like going to be their 3 main guys. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really like that core, honestly. I don't think it's good enough to make the playoffs. Or it is good enough to make the playoffs, but I see them as like a 45 win team. So that there you have it. I don't see them getting that much better. I think they won around 40 games this year. I think they'll win 45 next year. I do. If they would have just signed, if they would have had the cap space, let's say to sign Jimmy Butler outright, and they could have had a core of Goran Dragic, Josh Richardson, Jimmy Butler, Hassan Whiteside, and then a few of those other guys, I would have said like, okay, they're going to be a 50-win team. They'll probably be like a 4 or 5 seed. They might get to the second round, but with what they got, I don't know why they did this really. So that's why it doesn't make sense to me. Why it does is that they want a star player to build around, and all their guys are a lot of their main guys like Olynyk, Waiters, Dragic, and James Johnson are all guys that are looking to win right now and are in the primes of their career, so they want a guy to lead them. But then why it doesn't make sense, Jimmy Butler is going to be pretty old when he's done with this. He's going to be 33 and likely past his prime. And then they gave up a lot to get him, even though it doesn't seem like a lot. Okay, as for Jimmy Butler, why this does make sense, he must like Miami based on what Dwayne Wade's told him. So he gets to go to Miami and play for them, so that's a plus for him. Other reasons why it makes sense, he gets to be the undisputed main guy on a team. That clearly must be something that he really wants if he is willing to go to Miami. He must really like or have heard about the Miami culture, like Miami Beach. He must really want to be there. So that's another plus for him. That's really all I got. The only reasons that I could see Jimmy Butler wanting to go to the Heat are that he wants to be the man on a team, or he just really likes the organization and the Miami area in general. Why this doesn't make sense. If Jimmy Butler wanted to be the man on a team and wanted some like decent, still kind of in their prime guys around him, he should have stayed in Chicago. Chicago had Dwayne Wade, who was not in his prime, but still a good, viable option as a second guy. They still had Bobby Portis, Nikola Mirotic, Robin Lopez, Rajon Rondo. That was essentially that was very comparable to what he's going to have in Miami. I honestly, it's a very similar match. I expect them to be around, when they were in Chicago, I think they were 41 and 41. I expect this team to be about 45 and 37, so pretty similar. Um, so from that perspective, it almost says, Jimmy, what do you really want in your life? You could have just stayed in Chicago, avoided all these headaches, and not gone through these tumultuous 4 seasons that you have between 16 to 17, 17 to 18 with the Wolves, 18 to 19 with the 76ers, and now 19 to 20. Why didn't you just stay with Chicago if what you wanted to be was the man and just get paid a lot? You could have just done that in Chicago. Also, Jimmy, why don't you want you? I'm a Wolves fan, so I'm familiar with Jimmy Butler, and I've heard him talk a lot. When he came to Minnesota, and when he wanted to get traded to Philly, he said it's all about winning. It's all about winning. But now he's completely going against that, and it's clearly not all about winning. If it was, he would have stayed in Philly. He would have signed the extension there, and they could have had a core four of Embiid, Simmons, Jimmy Butler, and Tobias Harris for the next 4 to 5 seasons, and them and the Bucks would have been the favorites to go to the finals in the East because Durant would have been out for the Nets. And honestly, if Kawhi doesn't make that shot, we could have been talking about Philly being in the finals this year instead of Toronto. And Philly, they could have beaten Milwaukee. We don't know. We'll never know. But from that perspective, he's clearly going against his word of I'm all about winning. Because you're not all about winning if you're going to Miami. You're all about I don't know what you're all about. Because also, if he just wanted to get paid the most money, he should have also just stayed in Philly. You could have got 5 years. You could have got the 5 years and like about 35 per year um, in excuse me, I'm having a mind blank. Philadelphia. You could have gotten basically 5 years, 40 million per year. So that would be about um, not 200, but it would have been about like 185 to 190 somewhere in there for Jimmy Butler. But instead he signs with Miami for 4 years, 140. So it's clearly not all about money for him, and it's clearly not all about winning. So it's usually one or the other. I'm all about making as much money as I can, or I'm all about winning. But Philadelphia was the best choice for either of those options, and he didn't pick that. And maybe you're saying he thinks he can win in Miami, but not. I don't think so because if he thought, or scratch that, maybe he thinks I can't win in Philly, but I can somewhere else. If he really thinks that, he would have tried to go to Houston because that was his next best option to try and actually win. Um, but clearly, it's not about winning either. So to review, why Jimmy Butler would do this? He must really like the Heat organization. He must really like the Miami area. And why it doesn't make sense. He didn't get as much money as he could have with Philly, and he picked a team that doesn't really represent trying to go for it and win. Because he could have gone to the Lakers, he could have gone to the Rockets, he could have gone to the Clippers if Kawhi was going to go there. He could have teamed up with somebody, but no, he chose to basically be on a 45 win team next year and lose in the first round. So he didn't get the money or the star player. So it doesn't make any sense to me. And so basically, to quickly wrap up, my best case scenario for the Heat is that somehow Dragic turns back the clock about 4 years to when he was most improved player, averages 20 and 7 on great efficiency, and is a great second option to Butler. Bam Adebayo really comes out of his shell and becomes what everyone wanted Hassan Whiteside to be, which was 16 and 13 on great efficiency and blocks 3 shots a game. Dion Waiters thrives in a 6-man role, averaging 15 points per game. And if everybody plays the best that they've ever played, this team could maybe scratch 50 wins, be the 5th seed, and maybe upset the 4th seed and get to the second round and get swept. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, Goran Dragic continues to deteriorate. Bam Adebayo stagnates as far as his development. Justice Winslow struggles to play off ball since he was basically playing point guard last year with Dragic out. And so with his lack of shooting, he basically can't help the Heat. Dion Waiter starts pouting because he really liked it when he got to handle the ball and be an ISO player and take all the big shots, but now Jimmy's going to do that. So Dion will pout and deteriorate from basically having a bad attitude. And the Heat will win 40 games, and Jimmy Butler will just be a complainer the whole time because he will have come to Miami to, in quotation marks, all I want to do is win. But he comes to Miami, takes way less money than he could have to be on a subpar team. And he gets traded after his first season or two for chump change, and Miami is left to have to rebuild basically 2 years out from where they should have started a rebuild. So that's my very harsh, very opinionated thoughts on the Jimmy Butler signing. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to let me know what you think below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about the Jimmy Butler sign and trade. And I hope you have a good night. Bye.